right, Kyle, welcome to the show, man. I'm delighted we finally got you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. It's been good catching up with you and learning, getting to talk. So I'm looking forward to this today.
Yeah, awesome, man. And like I always like to warm up the guests in the easiest way possible by letting
All
them speak
right,
themselves. Warm up that mouth, get that brain going.
sure. Makes it
Yes, yes.
easy for you. You're the host of this, but then I have to do all the talking. I see how it is.
Totally, exactly. Surprise, surprise. People don't want to learn about me.
Great.
But let me ask, tell us a bit about yourself, like who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Sure. So my name's Kyle. I work for an owner operator for McDonald's. We have 56 restaurants between Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. I've been doing this for about 21 years now. This is still my first job. I started when I was 16, and I've kind of held every position all the way up through. Currently, I'm the director of training for our organization. But outside of the working part of that, I am married. I've been married for 10 years this year, later on this year. So very fortunate there, my wife Amanda. Then we have two children. I have an 11-year-old son named Lucas and a 10-year-old daughter named Henley. So keeps me very busy. I coach baseball for my son's team. And outside of that, that's really, we're just kind of work and live, make it happen.
Making it happen, man. Making it happen.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it's such a long time to be at like one business. I mean, you must have
Yeah.
learned like, so much about McDonald's. You've been like living and breathing the Golden Arches for your whole career. Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
tell us a bit about,
I
your
got ketchup in my veins, as we say.
ketchup in the veins? Exactly.
Yeah,
I was going to say Heinz, but it's no longer Heinz, I think, isn't it? So it's like whatever version
it's
of
a
ketchup is
secret.
in there now. Is that a secret? I feel like I saw that in the
No,
news.
no. Yeah,
Pittsburgh fans won't be happy with that. No. But here,
right.
tell me, like, just tell us a bit about, like, like what it was like kind of getting in there and kicking it off, and why you love the place so much and such an admirable place.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, when I started, I was 16 looking for a job. My hometown, I grew up in a small town in Ohio called Canal Fulton. It's in between Akron and Canton. Probably only name to fame there is LeBron James' hometown, and then the Football Hall of Fame. So, but in between those little places. Um, but so I was out looking for a job, and I was going around walking door to door, like the local businesses, and walked in there and put in an application. As I was walking out, the manager on duty, her name was Pam Torma. She was like my grandma. She came chasing me out, and she's like, "Hey, can you start now?" Sure, and the rest is history from that. But I got into it, started working with, making some friends, and I realized I was good at it, and I enjoyed the work and going through all of that, and just kind of kept on going with it. Became a career trainer after a few months, and I've always that's something training has always been something I'm very passionate about, and that was kind of my first dip into the water with all of that. Um, and then my fast forward a little bit, my senior year of high school, my mom unfortunately had lost her job, so I was kind of put into a position of have a place to live or finish school. So I chose to have a place to live, help out my family, and go through all of that. So I ended up dropping out of high school a couple months before I was supposed to graduate. So rough time in life with all of that. But with that, I talked to my store manager at the time and was like, hey, this is what's going on with me. I need to make as much money as possible, trying to take care of my family and do all these things. Can I get promoted? What do I got to do? And to her credit, she would not promote me until I got my GED. And looking back in hindsight at the moment when getting that, like I was mad because I'm like, what the hell? Who are you? Why are you like making me jump through these hoops? I just need to make some money. And she went above and beyond with that. She felt very strongly that I needed to get my education. I needed to make sure that I had at least that piece of paper because you don't know where you're going to go in life with all that. So beyond that, she actually picked me up and made sure that I got taken to the library to do all go through everything, to take the test and go through all of that to get all of that. And that was such a huge impactful moment in my life because that was way above and beyond the call of duty. There was no reason that she had to do that. It was not her responsibility. It was not her job. But she did that for me. And as a result, that was like what solidified in my mind that this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
So I fast forward, go through this. I went through management training, um, and I became an assistant manager. At this point in time, our company, when I first started, we only had one restaurant. And by the time I had gone through and gotten to the training or become a manager and gone through all of that, we were up to four restaurants now. And at this point is where we kind of started growing and tacking on a couple restaurants every year. And every time we grew, it was, hey, Kyle, will you go here? Sure. So every time we bought new restaurants, I would kind of go to help and get them like up to where we want to be and try to help and make sure that the restaurants were improving from when we bought them, because that's one of McDonald's big things is when they sell to a new operator, they want you to operate it at a higher level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
So,
Yeah, keep going.
no, go ahead. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable story, and I mean, it speaks volumes. Obviously not just to McDonald's, but the people you have at Top Trico too. You know what I mean? Like that they were
mhm.
like such kind of mentors that exist there, and that were able to kind of guide you. It sounds like.
For real. I mean, I used to tell people this all the time. Still talking about it even now. But I feel strongly that like McDonald's is not a job; it's a lifestyle. And to expand on that, like every single important person in my life is somebody that I met through McDonald's. And I don't know how many places in the world that you have the opportunity to be able to say something like that, but just the amount of impact and influence that you have on people is just it's bar none with everything. And it's been my life's work. Just I've been very passionate about McDonald's itself, but more specifically the company. My owner's name is Tom Locke. His son Trey is an operator through the second gen program, and just the people. His philosophy has always been to empower his people. He wants us to act like it's our business,
Yeah.
and that is really within the constraints of working for a global brand, you still have the ability to add your own personal flavor to it and make sure that you're able to take care of people. That's always been his thing, is take care of your people, because the philosophy is, if you have good people, you have good business. If you have bad people, you have bad business. If you have great people, you have great business. And that's just kind of been our North Star as we've gone through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think of, that it's so like ingrained in you these sort of incredibly like positive sort of like virtues, and obviously,
Mm,
leadership kind of really like stems from the top, and
mm.
I'm curious before getting into sort of talking about your own sort of personal leadership, like what were some of the sort of ethos or sort of lessons or things you've learned along the way that sort of kind of got you to where you are today in terms of like how you see like how people should be treated, how what makes successful sort of like franchise
Mm.
business, what makes like what separates good from great, so to speak.
Yeah. So I mean, without getting too much into like the leadership development of it, but like for me, I early on in life, things have always come easily in terms of understanding, and that early on before I matured a little bit and kind of had to take some bumps and licks along the way, like I would have these moments of like, I can do this, why can't you do this? And that was kind of just an arrogant attitude that I had about things, and I found myself alone. So I'm working a lot of extra hours, having to the old philosophy of like, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself, and that is just a miserable experience with that. So learning along the way that you cannot accomplish things, especially in our business, by yourself, and shifting my mindset from you know, I can do this, why can't you? To I can do this, let me help you, and let me bring you along to go with all of that. But McDonald's, one of the things that one of the ad campaigns that they came out with a few years ago was talking about McDonald's being America's best first job, and that is something that really resonated with me because in our business, the my best hope is I get you when you're 15 or 16, treat you right so you stay through college, and then you move on with life. I mean, go on to whatever it is. Hopefully we treat you well enough that you stick with us that time. But best case scenario for most employees is going to be that 7 or 8 year time frame with that. And for me, I mentioned what my experience was early on, where I fell into some hard times, and my life could have gone a lot differently than it did. So I really want but to bring that to life for me is really I wanted to make sure that when people enter my life, that they leave in a better spot, because one of the things that's been very fortunate, or that I've seen over the years, is that people come from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
You don't know what their experience was, you don't know what they've gone through, and everything that they've done, but the one thing we do have in common is the McDonald's brand, and just kind of having that shared experience. And every restaurant I've ever worked in, it's its own little family, and we treat that like we really truly are. We have each other's backs in that, and we really have tried to bring that to life through all of that. So for me, my store manager kind of paved the way for me when I was coming up, and that's what I want to pay forward all the time. Is I want to make sure that people are in a better spot when they leave than when they came in.
It's interesting as well, saying that like you've gone when you started, you were saying that there was one location and now you're at
Hmm.
56. So
Yeah,
like, I mean, just an incredible amount of growth
it
for the business. Like,
and it's
how did
really been in the last few years with that. We had one restaurant in 2000, and they kind of tacked on here and there a few restaurants. Fast forward to 2018, and we had 13 restaurants. So
wow.
over 18 years, we went from 1 to 13. 2018, we doubled in size and went to 26. Then in 2019, we went another 13 and went up to 39. And then 2020, we went up to 46, and that, so on and so forth. Now we're up to 56 with all that. So it's really been rapid in the last 5 years of
So that
growing.
I was going to say that has a big impact on you because as sort of the training lead, so to speak, you're
Hmm.
responsible for like how the businesses are run. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you've got hundreds of more people now under your purview, and net new people
Hmm.
come to the organization constantly. Like, how do you think about scaling culture and scaling sort of, yeah, I guess scaling culture across
Yeah.
a fine a speed of time, like keeping the culture that made you the person you are today. How do you think about applying that across multiple locations now?
That is a great question that we are still working on. That's actually, when we came up, when we were a smaller company, that was like one of the things that people always talked about, was so great, is that, it really feels like a family. I don't feel like a number. I don't, I feel like I'm actually a part of something.
Yeah.
And as we've grown, we've had to restructure several times because you can't operate at 26 at what you are at 13, and then you can't operate at 56 at what you were at 26. So we are constantly evolving with just trying to figure out what is the right structure to be able to do that. But now it's really about empowering people to bring that family aspect to life in their small pocket of the company with all of that. So, me as an individual, you know, I can be a role model and I can exude that myself, and bring that to life myself, but my impact is only as big as my impact is. So how can I get that into the hands of other people so that they are feeling like they can actually bring that to life as well? Um,
Yeah.
the
And I mean,
how is, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, no, go ahead. I'd rather you talk to me.
Yeah. So I mean, the how with that is, I mean, we've had some good learnings on. We've started partnering with a company called Giant Worldwide, in the last year or so, and just trying to learn some common language. So that way, we're all kind of being aligned and able to like speak the same language with each other, instead of, this is Kyle's way or Tom's way or Jennifer's way. She's my boss. Um,
Yeah.
so, and just kind of bringing that commonality with all of that. Another thing is just trying to make it fun, especially post COVID. I know we'll talk about that again in a little bit, but it, we lost a lot of like what made us during COVID, because you went to survival mode,
Yeah.
and with all of that, it's now like we are now 4 years later getting back to bringing the fun back and trying to make it more of a personalized experience, rather than it just being, like, okay, hey, you're a random crew person X that works at X store that's 3 hours away. Good for you. We don't want that to be everybody's experience. So we're constantly looking at that and trying to figure out what is the best way to go about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. Like, are there any sort of initiatives that you've done that you go, boom, that feels like a success now that we're back?
You know, I I think like something we're doing right now actually is that it seems like it's bringing the fun back, but we're calling it Arch Madness. But
Oh, nice.
just a dry, where we created a bit, so with the 56 restaurants, we created a bunch of different brackets to mimic the NCAA tournament. And we're having stores face off against each other and kind of go through that to like try to help improve our metrics, but also just kind of bring some fun and competition into it. So
Totally. I might steal
yeah.
that. I might
So
steal that.
if you want to play some bets, we're live on sports booking. No.
Yeah, you're the new fan. Yeah. Fun fact: in California, it's not legal. So like all these bracket things. Yeah, no, it's funny because like now that I'm in New York, I feel like I'm like back in Europe where there's this online sportsbook betting for everything. I'm like, oh, we might cut that part out, but or leave it in, whatever works. It's entertaining. No, but I think to be fair, I think you're not alone. I mean, I tell people all the time. I mean, I've done probably 90 something episodes of this podcast, and when it comes to like culture, there's been such a rebound that we've had like the last 4 years of like utter sort of devastation and kind of hanging on for dear life sort of behavior. Like businesses are doing their best just to keep the lights on. And now we're getting into the point where it's like, okay, cool. Like now we have to start really kind of bringing back a bit of like sort of cultural emphasis back into the organization to like even retain people. And what I mean by that is like, before there was like like we need bodies and we need them now. Now there is sorry. It's like a dog.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No. I was like, I totally get it. I've had so many of mine bark in the background. But so you've had people like, like we need bodies to like, we actually need quality bodies to now like, whoa, it's so expensive to even get people. We really need to double down on our training. And we really need to double down on figuring out ways to retain these. And like the number one way, as you're well aware of, because you run the training, is training people and providing career opportunities as you speak to for yourself, but also in terms of like designing programs for benefits and things outside of that. And I hear this a lot in the sense that it's almost like if you can combine the both, those that have the training and those that have like benefits that are worthwhile to people who are working there, it really sets them on a different plane for keeping staff and keeping them happy. And I presume that's kind of what you feel as well.
Oh yeah, it's been nuts over the last few years. Just really like for a lot of my career, you didn't really have to think about it because it was just McDonald's is always a job that was just there for people. So if they needed the job, they knew that was something that they could rely on. You get into COVID era, and a lot of our clientele, or not clientele, but people that would normally be applying for a job, especially those entry level positions, just kind of disappeared. You had an entire generation of people just decide that they were done working with all of that, and then the people coming in was a vastly different set of priorities with everything. So touching on like the wage and all that kind of stuff, we went from really had very being able to kind of set our own policies on a restaurant by restaurant basis on like how much people were hiring in at or any of that kind of stuff to in 2021 really like uniforming and like when it got really aggressive with like we're hiring in $3, $4, $5 above what minimum wage was at that point in time in our market to just try to be competitive with all of that. And it was super successful from that way, but then that kind of we rode that wave for a little bit and then it falls off. So it's like, okay, well what else is there? So really looking now at today's workforce is really more the priorities from at least from what I see is they are working to live, not living to work. So really prioritizing time away from work and maximizing. I'm going to come in, I'm going to give you the effort while I'm at work, but as soon as I'm clocking out for the day, don't talk to me. I'm done. I'm out. Like dropping off from there. That's really how it probably should have been all along, but that's not the world that you and I probably grew up in.
Yeah.
So, now like we've been looking at trying to do things like non-traditional work weeks. So rather than looking at, working 5, 8-hour shifts or for our salary managers, looking at 5, 9-hour shifts or anything like that, to trying to have some more flexibility around, can we make it to where they can work, 4 longer days instead of five normal, like the standard days or whatever you want to call it, or and basically kind of get to a point where as long as you're able to get your work done, I don't really care what you
Yeah.
work, and kind of go from there. Being that we're in restaurants, we don't have the luxury as much to do some of the work from home or any of that kind of stuff
Yeah.
for most of the positions, but we want to try where we can to be as flexible as possible. And that's something we've always been in our company, really tried to focus on being flexible and letting people know. Like Tom's motto for a long time we had written on the wall in the office was faith, family, fries, and putting things in that order.
Yeah.
And so, and just trying to bring that to life and make sure that people understand that we want you to prioritize things in that order. We're going to work hard, but we need to make sure that we're living as well and taking care of our family and those other priorities.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, it's great. I mean, to your point, it's like this should have been happening before anyway. I guess like here we
Right.
are. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like the industry's kind of woken up, but like obviously it's put a lot of pressure on on the bottom line. I mean, ultimately,
Hmm.
the last 2 years, obviously the last 4 years, but in particular, the last 2 years has been like labor cost and inflation costs are just been
Yeah.
like, and inflation's kind of calmed down a bit now. I say kind of in the sense that different states and different places and different sort of
Right.
restaurant businesses have whatever. But like, I mean, like the cost of avocados is not like yo-yoing like in a way that it was like a year ago, whichever. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that. Like it's kind of not as much of a talking point in the way that say labor costs as a line item on the P&L is
Hmm.
still such a crucial part of any of these businesses now. And you see it in big tech where they're laying off everybody. Like what Facebook is going 20% of the entire business.
Don't
Do you
worry,
know
we're
what I mean?
hiring.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like in the sense exactly that. So, like looking at it in terms of like the businesses, the people,
Hmm.
and from what I'm hearing from you, it's very much leaning into that fact that you guys are very like people first,
Yes.
and I guess, it's interesting, like when we talk about like innovation in the restaurant space, obviously McDonald's is like, famous for like its innovation, that's why it
Hmm.
exists the way it does.
Right.
And I guess, like just kind of just your take on like, say, where technology is meeting humans and humans meeting technology and, what you see just as an observer in the industry in terms of like where technology is failing or where technology is working really well.
Hmm. I mean, so for us, the technology piece, it's always changing and
Yeah.
going through all of that. McDonald's actually was a little bit behind on things because I think they like to they don't want to be first on
Yeah.
something. They want to perfect it and go through all of that after. But you see, like what the impact that we're having on things, with kiosks get introduced, and there's testing in different markets where we have like AI order taking,
Yeah.
in those things. New equipment coming out. We're getting ready to launch a program we call Simplified Breakfast, and it's just introducing a simpler way to cook our breakfast products so that we can like make it easier and less stressful on our kitchen staff. So the the downside to the technology piece is you get some pushback from people, especially we have some of the different generations that you have, that you'll have people that just flat out refuse to use the mobile app or use the kiosk or anything because, oh, you're taking people's jobs or any of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's not that. Like, if anything, we are using it to reposition people to give a better customer experience. Rather than me standing here and taking your order, I can be focused on making sure your food was made right and that you get your order hot and fresh, and you get that better hospitality experience rather than just pushing buttons on a register. um, and quite frankly, in some of those markets where they say, "Oh, you're taking our jobs," please apply. Like, we'll hire you. Come
Yeah.
on in. Some of those things are out of necessity because like I don't physically have the person to put on that register to take your order. So it's kind of a balance. It's nice that it enables us to be able to still take care of the customers, but it's just getting that message out there and make sure that we're controlling the narrative on like, no, I'm not taking people's jobs away. I want to elevate your experience, and this is one of the ways that we can do that.
Yeah. And I
So I
guess,
mean, go ahead.
no, you go
Okay.
ahead.
So that was something that definitely shifted a lot with like in the COVID era. Is pre-COVID we were delivery was something that maybe we got 1 or 2 orders a day in our market, and I'm sure it's bigger in like the more like populated cities and that kind of stuff. But before that, it was, the mobile app was not a huge thing. The delivery services, maybe 5 or 6 a day on any of that kind of stuff. Fast forward into where we are today, and the digital app is over 20% of my business, pushing
Yeah.
25%. And then if you throw in delivery, where we were getting 5 or 6 a day a couple of years ago, that's I'm getting 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 per hour in some of our
Yeah.
restaurants. So it's just the our customers' habits have changed on how they are
Yeah.
using the restaurants and going through that, and technology has enabled that to be able to make it a more streamlined. So that way, maybe customers that are not as mobile and can't get in their car and go through the drive-through like a traditional thing, they're still able to connect with us, and we're able to provide that service for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. How has it changed the operation inside the four walls? That like now or before you said it was a couple orders a day and now it's 20,
Mm-hmm.
25% of the daily business. Has that changed even like physically the four walls?
Yeah. So the what's changed in the four walls is where before we had basically two main ways that our customers interact with us. They either come into the restaurant and place their order and eat in the dining room, or they went through the drive-through.
Yeah.
Now they can do those two things, but additionally they can order from their app, and they can still go through the drive-through that way. They can just park in a parking stall and get curbside, so that we're running out orders that way, or they can order completely off-site with delivery and go through there. So we have several different channels. So in the past, like at most I could get maybe 1 or 2 orders at a time, and now I have 10 different order points that I could potentially get if everybody was ordering. If I was getting delivery, kiosk, front counter, drive through all at the same time, now my kitchen can go from having 0 orders to 10 orders like that.
Yeah.
So how that put a lot of pressure back in the kitchen to make sure that we're able to still move fast and be able to make sure that the orders are still right and going through all of that. I would say that's probably the biggest impact, is just the pressure that went on the kitchen. So with that came with requiring making sure that we were staffed properly and introducing
Yeah.
some of the new equipment to make it easier and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and presumably data plays a bigger role in this now, understanding like sort of like live real time sort of trends in terms of like when are people more likely to make orders. Thus, how
Mm-hmm.
do you staff appropriately for those times that you might expect to see more orders? Has there been a bigger onus placed on understanding data on the staff within the restaurants now to really kind of optimize themselves, so to speak, for the
Um,
restaurant and the demand?
I don't know. I don't know that like the your typical crew person is going to care about the data as much. I think that
Yeah,
I'm slinging burgers, I'm interacting with people,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But from
Like
a
the GMs,
business
for example.
standpoint, yeah, a GM or a supervisor, anybody like that, really can looking at the numbers, and I can see, okay, where am I having the biggest impact on my business, so that maybe it helps point you in the right direction to like, okay, I have a growing part of my business here, and I should really double down on that to really make the most of it. Um, Scaling back even further, like looking at specific deals on the app. So like which deals resonate more than other deals in certain areas, so that we're making sure that we're delivering on the value piece. Um, Something we're working on with the app. This is more at the McDonald's level, but trying to make it more personalized for the guests. So where the deals that show up on my app are not going to be the same deals that show up on your app, and it's based
Yeah.
off of our behaviors and what we normally order and all that kind of stuff. So it's nice to make it a more personalized experience for people. So where even though we're getting more digital, it's making it a little bit more personal.
Totally. I mean, this is a thing I hear from quote unquote CRM experts all the time, which is
Yeah.
like you buy something for your daughter and
Hmm.
you're then getting messaged for that kind of food. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And you're like,
Yeah.
that is like the almost like Project No No. You know what I mean? If you want to know how bad some of these things are, that's what bad looks like. You know what I mean? And it's like kind of
Hmm.
overcoming those sort of like, yes, intention good, execution bad. You know what I mean? And it's
Hmm.
like understanding that kind of like deepness and loyalty. It's something that like, I've spoken to like loyalty experts on this and they will very
Hmm.
much go in the weeds on those kinds of things. I think, it's interesting to see the sort of secular change in society, especially to like a business like yours, because it's kind of like you said, it's kind of people from all walks of life come in there. It's not
Yeah.
like, it's the most non-discriminatory building in the United States. Like
Yeah.
all colors, creeds, shapes, sizes, everyone's welcome.
Yep.
It's like Disneyland. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yep.
yeah, it's got the smile. And I think about that a lot, because especially like in post-COVID, where we've had like sort of like quote unquote, for all the boomers listening to this, we've had the boomers, inverted commas, leave the workplace, retire, kind of like step away or kind of not be as sort of involved in the economy. And we have like millennials kind of like stepping up through this experience. And then we have Gen Z and Gen Alpha, Bernie's even younger than that again, kind of coming through this sort of post-COVID. And there's like a myriad of different sort of like generational personality quirks, so to speak. And I think one thing that I think hospitality, from what I can experience, is more affected by this than others, because there's a generation of people coming through into the hospitality workforce that have lived a different life than anybody that we've ever experienced. And what I mean by that is they went through high school with laptops, you know what I mean? Like that they're like a very mobile first sort of kind of people, and they kind of come into restaurants and have a totally different expectation of what work looks like versus what we expect of people when they come into the workplace as well. So how do you think about like that type of audience and like motivating them, you know what I mean? Because they're a huge part of your workforce,
it truly is. I mean, at any given time, different restaurant, you might, even on the same shift, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 different generations of people, based on what's going on. And it's you can't interact with everybody the same way. You have to meet people where they are, and that's I've been teaching this a lot recently. Is like one of the burdens of leadership is the onus is on us to have to change and adapt with that. And because when I came in, I didn't think that I was like entitled or lazy or all the things that we say about the new generation when they come in. And now I've been fast forward to the 20 years I've been around. And I find myself being the old curmudgeon that's like, these kids, they don't know what they're doing. They're entitled, blah, blah, blah. But it's not even that. They are differently motivated. And the onus is on us on how to tap into that potential and be able to get the most out of those people while we have them. And like I touched on a little bit earlier, at least in my experience, what I'm finding is people want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. So it's not enough. It's not enough for me to clock in and, if you want the most out of me, you can't just say, okay, do this because I told you to do it. I need to understand why. I need to know what is the impact this has outside of the 4 walls of this restaurant. And then when I'm done working for the day, I want to be able to go home and not deal with work. And that's a big cultural shift, especially in the hospitality business. I'm sure it's this way in other restaurants, but when I was growing up through this, I was working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, not because I necessarily needed to or anything like that. It was just like one of those unspoken expectations of like, you are here and you work 24/7 and that's what you do. And that is not the way of the world anymore by any stretch.
And you see that with I don't want to say the kids you're working with today, because I don't want to sound disingenuous, the Gen Z, but like, do you feel like you see that like there is a very clear difference in terms of like how they see, I know you said we work to live, they live, we live to, what was the phrase you live to work and work to live?
So the generation now is they work to live, where I think at least my generation is very much so we live to work. So, I would like joke sometimes like I sold my soul a long time ago. So,
yeah, exactly.
But it's and that was like, like work can be all consuming. It was a hard lesson I had to learn. Like when I became a parent, I was not a good parent at first because I didn't know how to stop working for the day. And that was a huge adjustment in my life. And, to the credit of my boss, Jennifer, she really had a wake up call with me of like, you're a dad now. You have to prioritize things differently. And now looking at it, like it seems cliche a little bit almost, but like looking at it now, it's like, okay, the people coming in, like those are my kids too, because, and so I need to make sure that we are adjusting, the company is the baby almost, and just trying to make sure that everything is balanced and has a place. Yeah.
How many more men? Was it 2 Men and a Baby? What's the film again with Ted Danson? But what you reminded me of there? It's interesting. I mean, like we came out of college, like high school, around the time of financial crisis, like late 2000s, and it seems like that just did not bowl over people. It's like, I'll recover. Whereas I think
Mhm.
like Gen Z hits like COVID and it's like, nah, this is the second meteorite that's hit society in the last like 12 years. And it's like, maybe they've got it
Yeah.
right versus us. So it's like, yeah, it'll be fine. And it's like, yeah, nah, nobody can afford houses. Nobody can afford
I
anything. Like
I
through
listen,
the
I find
roof.
myself I get humbled almost every day of just interacting with some of the people. I'm blessed with the team that I have around me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I learned so much from them just in how to interact with today's culture and today's society, and it's constantly learning and evolving. The moment that you get stagnant and you stop learning, then you're dying, and there's not really a way to come back from that. So you have to approach things from the standpoint of like, yes, I've been around a long time, but I'm here to learn from you, and
Yeah.
what's going to make the best way to make this a mutually beneficial experience.
Um, I have a question for you though. Like, so like you
Yeah.
said, like the vast majority of your stores happened since 2018. What was it? You had 13 stores in 2018
Yeah.
and you're at 56 today. So like,
Hmm.
and a good chunk of like the crew staff are Gen Z. How has that impacted communication with people? Like you've scaled, and there's also seems to be like like I would imagine, and I'm just guessing, just throwing free. I'm free will on here, which is like
Hmm.
I would imagine there's an enormous like communication gap or a communication struggle or opportunity for you, in the sense that like, I mean, these kids are not checking emails, so it's like
Hmm.
even your system for delivering updates and everything is kind of like had to be slightly changed. Has that been a steep learning curve, like even kind of at that scale?
Yeah, so I'm going to be the boomer here, and I'll be if you heard it here first, that email communication is dead. Uh,
Yeah.
it is a dying breed. Nobody reads emails anymore. So it is from a communication standpoint. We've been trying, like, that's actually something we've been talking about in my training. I take it even a smaller scale, and I said the people that I'm sitting with is like, okay, if I said to you right now, I need everybody in this restaurant to know that my favorite color is green by the end of the day. How are you going to accomplish that? And it stumps people because they're like, I don't know. I'll talk to people. Okay, you're going to talk to all 70 people that work in this restaurant today? No, there's some people that are off. They're not going to answer the phone. So they're using one form of communication is not realistic anymore. So it takes a multifaceted approach to go through things. We've utilized social media quite a bit with our organization of just trying to. That is a way. There's Meta actually has a thing called Workplace.
Yeah.
Um, so, and the nice thing with that, it's integrated with our HR system to where
Yeah.
the only people that are active employees are the ones that have access to that. So we can push out company announcements, and that hits a large percentage of people. We're still trying to get everybody to buy into it, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's still not going to reach 100%. So I need, there is some word of mouth, there is some text messaging, or just posting things in the restaurant, but it takes all of those things to be able to keep everybody aligned.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? That the message is also the medium, like in the
Yeah,
sense that like, what good is the message if the medium,
yeah.
if the tree falls in the woods? And I think about that a lot because I meet so many people that still don't communicate with their staff where they're at.
Hmm.
Like I think we'd all
Yeah.
send them Snapchats if that was the only way they messaged. You know what I mean? It's like,
So, something I've discovered recently that was recommended to me is it's called Loom. I don't
love
know if you've
them.
heard of them or not.
I,
Yeah.
I, I
So
use it all the time. That's how
yeah.
I communicate with everybody
So
here.
that's for me, my team is spread between the three states. So like to me to be face to face with somebody every day is not possible. To connect with everybody, but our business moves very quickly. So it's nice to be able to just record, throw out my screen, throw out my face, and say, okay, hey, here's a walkthrough on how to do this thing, and hopefully this helps. And it's been impactful so far. I think too. We're just dabbling our toes into it, but that was a very
Totally.
recent thing. I actually just
Yeah.
recorded a couple today before this.
I actually send them all the time, and even for little. Do you know that there's a calendar sync thing on Gmail? And I was like, this is
Yeah.
changing everything. I need to send this to my leadership team to be like, I'm just going to
Hmm.
record a quick Loom, everybody. But I think like that async communication with a personal touch. Like you could send somebody a PowerPoint, or you could send them like a Word doc, and you read it, and it's so bland, and you're like, what am I supposed to take away from
Hmm.
this? Versus something that's like you can listen to this at 1.5x speed, just get the like run through. You can see, okay,
Yeah.
I'm following them up. And I think honestly, like, I mean, that's how I think a lot about content marketing in general, even for like our business, is like,
Yeah.
do people really want to see like really kind of like scrubbed up kind of pieces of content versus like, show me what the dashboard looks like and how to click a button,
Right.
and I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you give our users some credit that we don't need to over market or over like, you know, over design like solutions. And that's why Loom, I think, is like perfect. So that's kind of cool that you kind of came across that. Very, very cool. I think, you know, like, can you believe we've been talking for 40 minutes now? Can you
That's
believe
crazy.
it?
Yeah.
It was like, it will run so far, we'll cover so much ground, and we actually have. I mean, it's amazing. And I think, like, you know, you're an incredibly impressive person, Kyle, I have to say. I mean, it's been a delight having you on here, and kind of hearing about, you know, your background, your philosophies, your ideologies around managing people. And I always ask people at the end of the podcast, because we're at time, I always ask people at the end of the podcast, you know, a purposely vague question. Tell me, like, what advice would you give somebody listening to you here?
Oh, geez, that is super vague. You did not make that one, Alex. Jeez. No. I think the single biggest lesson that I learned over the years is that you cannot do it by yourself. So you need to humble yourself in knowing, you know, what are the things that you are competent in, what are the things that you're incompetent in. And people throw away that word a lot, but, you know, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and being able to lean into and have the support of a team is really how you can move mountains. And that's something I had to learn a hard lesson along the way of trying to do things myself because, you know, whatever reason. And, you know, sometimes being an expert is just knowing how to use your resources and not necessarily having all of the answers yourself.
Awesome, man. Well, Kyle Cano, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. You're an absolute champion.
Thank you for having me.